Bum, 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 bum. The Peter Like Show. Bum, 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 bum. All right, time to talk a little bit about my back to my Single Lives Matter movement. I've noticed many ways that Taiwan is nicer to singles, to same-sex couples, to all the other variations of situations in subtle ways. You got to understand, in the United States, you're not going to be assaulted for any of those things. You're not. You're probably not going to lose your job directly. Indirectly is a whole other story, but directly over those things. Oh, we're not going to hire you because you're single. No, you're not going to hear that. What you're much more likely to deal with is little barriers that add up, right? And Taiwan is like years ahead of that. For starters, the number one difference I noticed here in Taiwan that makes single life so much more comfortable is that one of the biggest barriers you can run into for being single in the U.S. is that you have one income, right? But here in Taiwan, we have so many different housing options that you're not forced to pay for a two-person home with a single income, right? So, for example, at the hostel that I'm living at, or actually at multiple ones that I stayed at during this trip, we had a lot of long-term residents, right? Over in the United States, if you try to stay in a hostel like that long term, first of all, a lot of hostels won't allow that. And second, I think if you live in a long-term hostel like that, the government technically classifies you as homeless. Like, why is it the government's right to classify what kind of housing counts, right? Isn't that for you to decide what makes you comfortable, right? Why is living in a hostel long term? I think in the United States also, if you're over a certain age, I forget what that number is. If you're over a certain age and you're still living with your parents, the government technically counts you as homeless. Like, why is the government allowed to say that? I think that's wrong in so many ways, right? I don't think the government should even be allowed to say somebody living on the street is homeless. That's up to the person to decide for themselves, right? If they want to get off of that, right? Some people like that, right? Some people could actually thrive on it, right? I don't know why. I think it should be illegal for the government to classify what kind of housing counts as what, right? Especially if they're going to treat those people differently in some way, right? The other thing that let's talk about workplace benefits. For starters, because we have healthcare here in Taiwan, the idea that married people get to put their spouse, their dependents on health is negated, right? Because we have universal healthcare anyway. So that does take away. I mean, granted, there's pros and cons of the healthcare, but that does take away a big part of the discrimination against singles, right? Similarly, our pension retirement system works a little differently. That kind of negates the disparity for singles. I've also noticed a lot of workplace quote unquote benefits that benefit singles meaningfully, right? So for starters, the workplace here is much more relaxed, right? I can't tell you how many times I read online or hear about it or just hear from my own social circle. So many rules that don't really mean anything, right? So for one thing, I struggle with eating disorders, and a lot of American workplaces have so many rigid things, right? So one of my least favorite is that it's kind of frowned upon to eat at our desks at multiple jobs I've been at. I've worked at tutoring centers. I now teach at a community college. I've worked at technology companies as well. Not so much at the tech companies, but more so at the tutoring and the university. We can't eat at our desks, right? And it's a big problem for me because one of the ways I get over my eating disorders is that I remind myself, hey, we'll come back to it, right? 10 minutes later, 20 minutes later, if I'm still having that craving, I can come back to it. Well, unfortunately, if I can't eat at my desk and I only have like a half-hour lunch break in between two classes, it's kind of hard to play this game of delay, 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 right? Part of the reason that here in Taiwan, I've been able to do a 16-hour fast every day, occasionally do a 30-something, and I did a 62-hour fast one time here, is that I kept delaying, right? Oh, I'll come back to it 15 minutes. Got to remember, a 62-hour fast happens 5 minutes at a time, right? You got to remember that, right? Unfortunately, a lot of times I wasn't given the opportunity to have those 5 minutes at a time. Here in Taiwan, the culture is that as long as your work gets done, who cares how it gets done, right? If you can wave a magic wand, like for example, a big problem with my tutoring back home in the U.S. is that if you get too good at it, you get fewer hours, right? You find a tutoring client on Facebook. Oh, how much do you charge per hour, right? And whatever number you say there, if you get really good at your tutoring, now I guess you could charge more per hour, but most people are going to look at 500 an hour, right? And even though you won't, they won't know that they're going to get done with their tutoring in 2 minutes until you actually start tutoring, right? Here in Taiwan, there's more of a people are smarter about what they're doing. They're not just paying for whatever number, right, at their jobs, right? And so there's more of a live and let live, right? Another problem is that I used to think I look so young for my age, right? Back home in the U.S., I can't put the age as it looks on my ID into a dating app because nobody will click on it, right? Or at when I'm looking for these tutoring gigs, I look so young. People don't believe that I have a PhD, right? It turns out I've learned that it's not that I look so young for my age back home in the United States. It's that most Americans look too old for their age in the United. I don't seem to have that problem here in Taiwan anymore, right? And it goes to show that your own personal health affects the rest of everybody that you interact with, right? It's not if you decide to mess up your body, you're not just affecting yourself anymore, right? You're kind of an ambassador for your circle of friends, right? Or your peer group, right? All right, so that sums up why I feel life in Taiwan. Oh yeah, another thing I noticed, I was at here in Taiwan, we actually do have some workplace benefits for singles in some cases. I was at a speed dating event here in Taiwan, and there was a whole group of friends who went there, and I discovered that it was part of their workplace benefits package that the workplace sent them on speed dating events and even matchmaking services, right? And that could be quite valuable, right? Now here's the thing: I hope they also have workplace benefits that benefit singles who are not looking for somebody as well. I don't know if they do, right? But I'm hearing what I heard. I wouldn't be surprised if they did. This is the Peter Like Show. Bum 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 bum. The Peter Like Show. Bum 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 bum.